Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back. Brandon again. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at last of 3 racks that I'm considering for my garage gym build that I'm currently working on. As part of that, there's been a couple of other videos in this series. Make sure you catch up on those. I've actually made a playlist for them. But to recap the other videos so far, the first video, I overlooked what I was looking for this particular rack. Spoiler alert, 3x3, 1-inch hardware, space saving in a sense where it can fit both in the garage and the basement, has high resale value as I'm looking to only own this rack for about 18 months. And that being said, I narrowed it down to 3 different choices. The next video in the series highlights the Rep Fitness HR 5000, the following video, the Sorinex XL half rack, and this video is on the Rogue Monster half rack, formerly known as the Collegiate half rack, I believe. So for this particular video, that's what I'm going to talk about, this rack from Rogue. I'm going to talk about the pros and the cons, and also just a little bit of information up to this point. Reading your comments on the previous videos, a lot of people think I went Rogue because I saved it for last. That is not the case. I actually am going through these racks in the orders that they were under consideration. So Rep Fitness was my first choice, then Sorinex, and lastly Rogue. And I say that because even though I like Rogue, I know their products, a part of me wanted to kind of go just a little bit of a different route since I've owned a Rogue rack for the last couple of years. And you're not going to have the opportunity, or at least I'm probably not going to have the opportunity to own one of these higher end racks that often. So I really wanted to make sure that I took a look at the other options out there. And again, the Rogue was my last choice. And you might see why after I go through some of these pros and cons of it. So that being said, let's go ahead and go to the Rogue website, which I like. Out of the 3 sites that I've been looking at, I have to say that Rogue is the best in terms of their presentation and also their add-ons. Rep has some, yes, it's true, but I just like Rogue's system a little bit better as it shows you everything all up front, nice high quality pictures when you change things. Sorinex does the same, but with Sorinex, you have a little bit of issue actually picking the add-ons because they don't give you many options built into the GUI or GUI on the actual website. So let's take a look here at the Rogue Monster half rack. I'm of course looking at the single half rack, not the dual one, even though you can also get dual ones from Sorinex and Rep. Not really useful for my purpose. So the base price here on the Rogue version is $1,160, which if we look at the base price across all 3 racks I'm looking at, this is by far the lowest starting price point, although that's not always the whole story, so to say, but that is very appealing up front. So the biggest plus for it right off the bat is its initial base price. That being said, I also think it has a high resale value. I say this knowing owned tons of Rogue equipment in the past and being able to flip it and resell it and not take that much of a hit. That's also pretty appealing to me in this aspect. So again, I had an Rogue RML 690C, which I think I paid around $1,800 for, ended up selling it for around $1,700, give or take. So very little drop off considering, again, it depreciated only probably $100, $200 in the 4 to 5 years that I owned it. That being said, again, having that product that long and having it hold up very well and retain its quality in terms of its monetary value, but also just in its function, I can know that if I buy Rogue that it's going to last me a long time. And even though I've heard great things about Sorinex, Rep Fitness, as I've mentioned before, typically imports most of their stuff overseas. So this is another positive for Rogue here. When I take a look on this other thing for Rogue, one of the other benefits is if you're building a home gym, which for me, I'm not building a full-on build like I have in the past, but it's easy to bundle things together because it's really a one-stop shop for a lot of strength equipment. They have really good barbells, they have really good plates, they have benches, anything you can really imagine you can get through Rogue. And from the shipping standpoint, once you exceed a certain threshold, in this case $5,000, you get free shipping. I believe Rep Fitness, once you exceed certain thresholds, you get discounts on your overall order, but not tremendous discounts where shipping could definitely save you a couple $100, or in the case of Sorinex, it might be over $1,000 to ship something, as we saw from that last video. So the fact that you can bundle a lot of items together is great. And even if you don't meet that 5,000 threshold to get free shipping, the shipping for freight is pretty manageable, meaning that you can be adding a ton of stuff and you're not going to see that much of a price difference. From my experience, in most cases, it's somewhere between $200 to $300 for freight shipping, no matter how much you get, again, until you really start to exceed that threshold of $5,000, and then it's free anyway. So definitely a plus there. Now, that being said, that's really the biggest pluses for Rogue, in my opinion. Talking about the rest of the stuff on here, there's a lot of pushes. In fact, there's more pushes or kind of breaking even than the other 2 racks that I've been looking at. So the first of all, I want to talk about the footprint here because that's something a lot of you guys brought up in the comments and said Rogue is definitely out because the Monster half rack is 100 inches tall. And that's partly true. If you take a look at the picture, you can actually see there's angled uprights. So the front posts are 100 inches, the back posts are 90 inches. For me, This could probably fit in the garage because the garage has higher ceilings, but if I want to transition this to the basement initially, or eventually I should say, it's not going to have 100-foot ceilings, 100-inch ceilings in the basement. So that could be a potential issue. In fact, it would be a deal breaker because there's no way I'd be able to do that. Now, for this, one of the things I did is I reached out to Rogue and talked to him about this and said, hey, can I switch this out so it's just 90 inches on both the back and the front? And they said they could do that at no extra charge. So they could simply switch out the front uprights, knowing that I'd lose the angled cross members, and instead it would just be flat across 90 inches on both sides at no extra cost. So this way, this goes from the tallest potential option to the shortest potential option being right at 90 inches, which ideally is where I'm going to find myself at. If you remember, the Rep Fitness is anywhere from 98 to 93, depending on the angle of the pull-up bar you have. And the Sorinex was roughly 95.5 inches. So this is by far and away the most economical option in terms of vertical space that it takes up, which is appealing. But it's a push because, again, you have to change it out. So you're not getting a discount for going with the shorter front posts, and the taller steel and more steel is worked into the initial price. And one of the appeals for something like this, typically having this half rack, is having that 100-inch pull-up bar up front is usually a pretty nice feature, but it would be lost on me and at no added benefit back in terms of saving me any money. So it's kind of a push in my opinion. Now, speaking of that and saving money, I also have the price here as a push. As I mentioned already, the base price, $1,160, is the lowest I've seen. But if you take a look at the picture here on the screen, what you'll notice is that it comes with a standard pair of J-cups, which is no big deal. It comes with integrated plate storage, which is nice. Comes with band pegs, which is nice. But there's no safety features here. So it doesn't have any spotter arms like you get standard with the Sorinex or the Rep Fitness model. There's also no pin safeties, no strap safeties. So that means you're going to have to add on safeties yourself. Now, if we scroll down here, you can take a look at your options. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So there's a couple different options. You can add the pipe set for $85, and this would allow you to actually train in the rack. The problem is I find that 24 inches is a bit too narrow. I find 30 inches or more to be more ideal. In fact, 30 inches for me is perfect, but 24 inches, just a little bit tough, especially when you consider if you're going to be training within this rack, you have to take a reminder that you have all the integrated plate storage here. So depending on where you have your plates and how far your unrack is, your walkout, it's going to be very easy to potentially bump those plates. So you may have to actually end up taking some of that plate storage off, which again, you're paying for and then not going to get the benefit out of. So that's a negative in my opinion. You could, of course, add on some safety straps, which I love safety straps. I had them on my last setup, but they're almost $200 extra, which again is going to raise the base price. Or if you want to get the safety spotter arms like you have on the other half racks, and in most cases, if you're getting a half rack, you're going to be training outside of the rack. So spotter arms are usually the standard for half racks. It's an additional $270, which in this case, I'm going to add because I think that's a more realistic option. So I'm going to go ahead and add this to my cart along with the basic half rack. And what you can see is that base price of $1,160 quickly jumps up to $1,430, placing it as a base price, the most expensive of the three racks. Now, of course, we do have to factor in other things like shipping and tax, so let's go ahead and do that. As a reminder, I am in Rhode Island. My zip code is for Narragansett. Great place to visit this time of year. I'm going to go ahead and update this so we get an overall comparison of price versus the other racks I've been looking at. And of course, this is going to take time to load, and I should have done this in advance, but you're going to have to hear me ramble on for a few seconds while that does that. So shipping and handling here is $150. Again, that's very good. In fact, that's the best shipping rate I've got from both Rep and Sorinex. So as a reminder, the Rep Fitness shipping rate was just under $200, and the Sorinex shipping rate was just over $540. So the least expensive through Rogue in that regard. They do charge tax, which Sorinex did as well, but Rep Fitness did not, giving us an all-in price here of $1,690. I'm going to round up to $1,700. So where does that place us in terms of everyone else? Sorinex came in at just under $1,900. Rep came in at, I think, just under $1,400. So this is right in the middle of the pack. So again, price for me here is a push. Initially, it seemed cheap, but after you add on what you need to add on and taking into account shipping and freight, it's right in the middle of the pack. So it's not really a pro or a con, in my opinion, in that regard. Another push for me here is the availability. So we've talked a little bit about that. Ideally, we're all spoiled by Amazon. We want to get stuff the next day. When you're shipping stuff by freight, it's just not possible. And when you deal with companies like Sorinex who do stuff made to order, we talked about being potentially 6 to 8 weeks as a standard. However, switching some stuff out would expedite that a little bit, or you could pay extra to have it shipped even faster, but you're still looking at roughly 4 to 6 weeks. Through Rep Fitness, they were available as is and could be shipped out probably the next day, and it would take roughly, I would guess, a week to get to you, so the quickest by far. For Rogue, what we're looking at is 10 to 14 days or around 2 weeks. So again, right in the middle, why I think the availability here for me is a push. Now let's talk about some of the negatives, because there are some here. I'm not a complete Rogue fanboy, although again, self-admittedly, I do like Rogue because I've owned a lot of their equipment and it's held up extremely well. Compared to the other racks, this has the least amount of customization when it comes to color options. So with the other racks, when you're actually setting up and buying whatever you want to buy to put in your cart, you have some choices, whether that be the color of the rack itself, like through Rep Fitness, or the colors of the attachments you're getting, like in Sorinex. With Rogue as a standard, there's no color customization options. Now, I'm not saying you probably can't do that for a fee. A lot of people will do a lot of weird stuff, including customize and color your rack. But again, you're talking about added costs and more than likely a lot more lead time on that, as they have to powder coat or find those materials to do that. So a negative for me for the half rack would be very limited customization. You still get this nice red and black contrast color, which I think looks really good. But again, it's a little bit basic. And if you're getting your own rack, a lot of people like to put on their own flair these days, especially considering that it's so easy to do through most companies. A big negative for me also is the fact that it doesn't have spotter arms, I should say, again, where that's standard equipment for the other rack. So that kind of ties into the price, but you're looking at least around $270 to get spotter arms. Again, the benefit of having some of this 3x3 with 1-inch hardware racks is you could probably adapt someone else's gear to it. But then again, you're going to be paying probably a couple $100 to do that for the equipment itself. And then not only are you going to have to pay the shipping on the rack, but if you go with another company, you're going to have to pay shipping and tax on those spotter arms, which can actually be pretty heavy and might be pretty expensive to ship as well. So that's the overview of the Rogue rack. The other negative I can say, which isn't necessarily a huge negative, but it is something I'm thinking about in this process, is again, if I go with Rogue, I think that's where a lot of people just assume that I was going to order. I've seen a lot of people say, oh, you mentioned in the beginning videos that you've already had the rack, it's already shipped. It must have been Rogue or Rep because those were the quickest. I will say, you have to remember, I've been in this house for a couple of weeks already, and I actually placed my order before I moved out of my old house, meaning that this video that I'm doing now is just behind. Things have been going in motion for a couple of weeks, but with moving and with work and with traveling, I just haven't had time to make videos. So don't necessarily think that the time frame here means anything specific, because it definitely doesn't. I will say from the time that I actually made it my decision and placed my order, I could have had any of these 3 racks in by now. So full disclosure there, don't think I just went with Rogue because it was the quickest, so to say, or the case may be. But that's a little bit insight here into the Rogue rack. The other positives that I can really think of, which I've mentioned is something that I like, is I like the thought of being able to buy into a complete system, meaning that you buy a rack and accessories from the same provider, which was something that Rep Fitness didn't allow me to do at the time. And with Sorinex it did, but it's very expensive to do so. But Sorinex is known as innovators, as I would say is Rogue, although there's a lot of people that say Rogue just copies everything Sorinex does. And that might be a title or a topic for another video. But hopefully that gives you some insight into the Monster Half Rack. In the next video that I put up, I'm going to be comparing all 3 racks directly, even though I've done a little bit of that in each of these videos, but kind of lay it out as what I like, what I don't like, and I'll eliminate one by one, and eventually lead you to my process of deciding on which rack is going to go in the garage. And we'll end that video there and then do one final video showing you the rack in the garage itself. And I'll talk a little bit about what I like and what I don't like and kind of some post-thought feels. So hopefully you guys like this series. Again, there is a playlist I've created. Let me know your feedback in the comment section below on any of these pieces of equipment or anything you're thinking about and just want my input on how I would go about making that decision. In the meantime, as always, thanks for watching and stay big.